Imagine a time when the fate of all Western civilization hung by the thinnest of threads. A time when an empire so vast that it stretched from the edge of India to the deserts of Egypt seemed poised to swallow the free cities of Greece whole. Its armies were said to drink rivers dry. Its kings ruled with divine authority, and its ambition knew no limits. This was the Persian Empire under King Xerxes I, the mightiest power the ancient world had ever seen. To understand the miracle that would later unfold on the plains of Plataea, we must return to the years before that fateful summer of 479 BC, when the storm first began to gather. Xerxes had inherited not just a kingdom, but an obsession. His father, Darius the Great, had tried to conquer Greece a decade earlier and failed. On the fields of Marathon, a small band of hoplites, citizen soldiers fighting for their homeland, had driven back the seemingly invincible Persians. That defeat burned in Persian memory like a wound to the empire's pride. Xerxes vowed to avenge it. He spent years assembling an army that the world had never seen before. Ancient writers spoke in awe of its scale. Some claimed millions of men, though modern estimates place the number closer to 200,000 or 300,000. Still, for the 5th century before Christ, it was an army beyond imagining. Soldiers from every corner of the empire marched under Xerxes' banners, Medes and Bactrians with their long spears, Ethiopians draped in leopard skins, archers from the plains of Sogdia, and the famed immortals, 10,000 elite warriors whose ranks never diminished. When one fell, another immediately stepped forward to take his place. This great host was not just a force of arms, it was a monument to Persian organization. Bridges were built across the Hellespont to link Asia and Europe. When a storm destroyed the first one, Xerxes, furious at nature's defiance, ordered the sea itself to be whipped 300 times. A second bridge was constructed, stronger than the first. Canals were dug, supply depots filled. Every detail was planned with cold precision. The invasion of Greece was not a campaign. It was the movement of an entire world. In the spring of 480 BC, the tide began to roll west. Cities fell one by one, their citizens offering earth and water, symbols of submission to the great king. But in 2 cities, the answer was defiance. Athens and Sparta, bitter rivals for centuries, now found themselves facing a common enemy too powerful to ignore. Against all odds, they formed an alliance, fragile and mistrustful though it was. It was a miracle of politics that the Greeks united at all. They knew they could not win by numbers. Their only hope was to fight where numbers counted for less, to use the land itself as their ally. In narrow passes, along rocky coasts, they would make the Persians pay dearly for every step forward. The first great stand came at Thermopylae, the Hot Gates, a narrow path between the mountains and the sea. There, King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans, joined by several thousand allies, held back the Persian flood for 3 long days. They fought not merely to delay an army, but to send a message that Greek courage and discipline could defy even a god-king. Betrayed by a local who revealed a hidden path, Leonidas and his men were surrounded. They died to the last, buying precious time for Greece. Thermopylae fell, but the spirit of resistance did not. Xerxes marched south, his army burning every town in its path. Athens was evacuated, its citizens fleeing to the nearby island of Salamis, and when the Persians entered the city, they found it empty. Xerxes ordered it burned. Flames rose from the Acropolis, smoke darkened the sky, and it seemed that all Greece would soon be ash and memory. But the Greeks had not yet given up. On the waters near Salamis, the cunning Athenian general Themistocles lured the Persian navy into a trap. The massive Persian fleet, designed for open seas, was forced to fight in the narrow straits. Their great numbers became a curse. Ship collided with ship, chaos spread, and the smaller, nimbler Greek triremes struck like daggers. When the smoke cleared, hundreds of Persian ships had been destroyed. Xerxes watched from his throne upon the shore as his fleet shattered before his eyes. The god king, who had once whipped the sea itself, now learned that even the greatest power could drown. Defeated at sea but still mighty on land, Xerxes withdrew to Persia, leaving his best general, Mardonius, to finish the conquest. Mardonius was clever, patient, and ruthless. He wintered his army in the rich plains of Boeotia and sought to divide the Greeks with diplomacy. He offered Athens generous peace terms, their city rebuilt, lands restored, and alliance under Persian protection. It was a tempting offer for a city lying in ruins, but the Athenians refused. "As long as the sun shines," they declared, "we will make no peace with the Persians." It was a choice of principle over survival, and one that would shape history. When spring came again, Mardonius marched south, hoping to crush what remained of Greek resistance. The Athenians, desperate for help, demanded that Sparta act. The Spartans hesitated at first, fearing to leave their homeland undefended. But Athens sent an ultimatum. If Sparta would not fight, they would be forced to accept the Persian offer. That message struck home. For all their pride, the Spartans could not let Greece fall without them. Under the command of Pausanias, the young regent and cousin of the fallen Leonidas, Sparta mobilized its full army, a rare and momentous event. Joined by thousands of allies, they marched north to meet the Persians. It was the largest Greek army ever assembled, roughly 100,000 men. Yet still, they were outnumbered. Mardonius awaited them near the small city of Plataea in the hills of Boeotia. His army was perhaps 150,000 strong, including the formidable Persian cavalry. The stage was set for one of the most decisive battles in history. A battle not only for Greece, but for the future of Western civilization itself. As the two armies stared across the plain, each knew that what would happen here would echo through the ages. But no one yet knew that the true secret weapon, the force that would shatter the Persian invasion, was not made of bronze or iron. It was something invisible, something born from within the human spirit itself. It was discipline. For days, the two armies faced each other across the Boeotian plain, each waiting for the other to make the first move. The sun rose and fell over their camps, and the tension thickened like summer heat. On one side stood Mardonius, confident, calculating, his tents spread across the open plain, his cavalry restless and eager. On the other side, Pausanias and the Greeks held the high ground, their backs against the slopes of Mount Cithaeron, their lines drawn in cautious defense. At first glance, it might have seemed that Mardonius held every advantage. His cavalry was unmatched, swift, deadly, and tireless, while the Greek army, though brave, was slow and awkward on open terrain. But the Persians had learned caution after Thermopylae and Salamis. Mardonius knew that the Greek hoplites, with their heavy armor and long spears, were nearly unstoppable in close combat if they fought on ground of their choosing. He would not attack headlong into their bronze wall. Instead, he would starve them out. Day after day, Persian horsemen swept around the Greek positions. Arrows hissed through the air, thudding into shields and armor. Supplies were harassed, messengers cut down, food convoys burned. Then came the greatest blow of all, a daring night raid that seized control of the Gargaphia Spring, the Greeks' only reliable water source. By morning, the Greeks realized what had happened. The spring that had kept them alive was fouled and blocked. 100,000 men under the blistering summer sun now had no water. The situation grew desperate. Thirst gnawed at the ranks. Tempers flared. Inside the Greek camp, the fragile alliance began to fracture. The Athenians argued with the Spartans with their allies from Tegea and Corinth. Some demanded an immediate retreat to a safer position. Others warned that any movement would invite disaster, that the Persians would fall upon them the moment they turned their backs. Pausanias listened in silence, his face unreadable beneath the bronze crest of his helmet. He was young, still untested in supreme command, and the weight of every decision pressed down on him like the mountain behind. To stay meant slow death from thirst and hunger. To move meant chaos. Yet he knew he could not wait forever. Finally, he made a daring choice. Under cover of darkness, the Greeks would withdraw to a new position near the city of Plataea, where there was fresh water and better ground for their supply lines. The retreat would take place in 3 groups, each moving separately to avoid confusion on the narrow mountain roads. It was a sound plan, on parchment. But in practice, the night became their enemy. The moon hid behind drifting clouds. Orders were misunderstood, units became separated. Some contingents began marching too early, others too late. Paths crossed, men stumbled through darkness, torches flickering like fireflies in the wind. The army that had stood proud and united now stretched across miles of confusion, scattered across the plain. When dawn rose over the hills on that fateful morning, August 27, 479 BC, the Greeks were divided, some still retreating, others halted in disarray. Mardonius could hardly believe his luck. Scouts rushed back to his tent with the news. The enemy was withdrawing, their formations broken. To him, it seemed the gods themselves had delivered victory. He wasted no time. "Now," he said to have declared, "we will end this Greek defiance once and for all." Trumpets sounded through the Persian camp. Cavalry poured onto the plain, thundering hooves shaking the earth. Behind them marched the Persian infantry, the Medes, the Bactrians, and finally the Immortals, their ranks glittering with silver and gold. Mardonius rode at their head upon a white horse, the symbol of royal favor. Across the field, Pausanias saw the storm coming. His heart must have clenched. The Persian army advancing in perfect order, while his own forces were still scattered and half-formed. He had with him barely 50,000 men, mostly Spartans and their allies from Tegea, isolated from the rest of the Greek army by several miles. The Athenians, further to the east, were still engaged with Greek traders who fought for Persia. It seemed hopeless. Yet Pausanias did not panic. He ordered his men to stand firm, to form up in the phalanx, the ancient Greek formation that had been their shield for generations. Bronze shields overlapped, spear points angled forward like the quills of an iron beast. They waited in silence, the morning wind whispering through their crimson cloaks. The Persians came closer. Their archers loosed volleys of arrows that darkened the sky. The missiles rattled against the Greek shields, a deadly rain of iron. Men fell, but the line did not break. Then, with a roar, the Persian infantry charged. Their wicker shields and short spears gleamed in the sunlight as they ran headlong into the immovable wall of bronze and muscle. The impact was terrible, a crash of wood and metal, of shouted curses and the screams of dying men. The Battle of Plataea had begun. What followed was not the clash of two armies in open maneuver, but the grinding collision of two worlds. The disciplined endurance of the Greek phalanx against the fluid ferocity of the Persian host. The Persians were brave, no doubt. They rushed forward again and again, seizing at spears, hacking at shields, trying to force gaps in the line. The Greeks answered with calm precision, each man protecting the comrade beside him. The longer spears of the hoplites pierced through the Persians' lighter armor. The massive bronze shields shoved against the wicker barriers, crushing them flat. Step by step, the Greeks began to push forward. Still, Mardonius fought like a lion. He led from the front, urging his men onward. Around him, his personal guard, 1,000 of Persia's finest, formed a ring of steel. Arrows flashed, swords clashed, and the air filled with dust and blood. At last, amid the chaos, a Spartan spear found its mark. Mardonius fell from his horse, struck down in the heart of the battle. For a moment, his guard fought desperately to defend his body. Then they too were overwhelmed. The great king's general, the man left to conquer Greece, lay dead upon the plain, and with him, the Persian will to fight died too. The disciplined phalanx that had stood unbroken under wave after wave of attack now surged forward like a bronze tide. The Persian lines wavered, then shattered. What began as an orderly retreat turned to panic. Soldiers fled toward their fortified camp, throwing down their weapons, trampling one another in terror. Pausanias and his Spartans advanced relentlessly. The rest of the Greek army, now realizing what was happening, came rushing from all sides. The Athenians, the Corinthians, the Megarians, their war cries echoing off the hills. The Persians reached their camp, a great wooden palisade they had built for defense. But there was no safety behind those walls. The Greeks surrounded it, hacking and burning their way inside. What followed was chaos and slaughter. By the time the sun set, the might of Persia lay broken. Of Mardonius's vast host, only a few thousand escaped. The Battle of Plataea was over, and the greatest empire the world had ever known had been humbled by the discipline and unity of a handful of free Greek cities. When the dust settled over Plataea, silence fell across the field. A silence broken only by the cries of the wounded and the crackle of burning tents. The Persians were gone. Their banners, once symbols of divine empire, lay trampled in the blood-stained earth. The great invasion that had begun with such arrogance and confidence had ended in ruin. News of the victory spread through Greece like wildfire. In the same week, far to the east, the Greek fleet crushed the remnants of the Persian navy near Mycale on the coast of Ionia. Two battles fought almost simultaneously, two triumphs that shattered Persian hopes forever. The mightiest empire in the world had been driven out of Europe. But what truly had won the Battle of Plataea? At first glance, the answer seemed simple: better weapons, heavier armor, favorable ground. Yet these were not new advantages. The Persians had faced well-armed enemies before. No, the real reason lay deeper, in something invisible, something born from the heart of Greek society itself. Discipline. That was the secret weapon that destroyed the Persian invasion. Not a machine, not a miracle, but a mindset. Every Greek hoplite in that battle had spent years training for the moment when the line would waver and the instinct to survive would clash with the duty to stand firm. The Spartan boy began his training at the age of 7. For 13 years, he learned not only to fight, but to fight as part of something greater than himself. He learned that his shield was not his own. It existed to protect the man to his left. His courage was not for personal glory, but for the survival of the line. When the Persians charged, the Spartans did not fight as individuals. They fought as a single organism, a living wall of bronze and willpower. No matter how fierce the storm, the wall did not break. That, more than anything, was what Mardonius failed to understand. The Persians had numbers, speed, cavalry, archers, and the resources of an empire, but they lacked that unbreakable unity, that shared conviction. When their general fell, their cohesion shattered. Each man fought for himself, and then fled for himself. The Greeks, by contrast, fought for one another. In that contrast lies one of history's great lessons. The Battle of Plataea was not simply the end of a war. It was the moment when the world changed direction. Had Mardonius triumphed that day, Greece would have become a province of the Persian Empire. Athenian democracy, still fragile and young, might have vanished before it had the chance to mature. The ideas that would later shape philosophy, science, and art, the foundations of Western civilization, might never have come to be. Instead, Plataea ensured that those ideas would survive. The Greeks proved that freedom could stand against empire, that courage and discipline could triumph over sheer power. For the Spartans, the victory confirmed their place as the supreme warriors of Greece. They had stood firm where others might have broken, and their legend grew. Yet this glory would be a double-edged sword. The weight of that reputation, of being the saviors of Greece, would in time drag Sparta into wars it did not want, against fellow Greeks rather than foreign invaders. For the Athenians, Plataea became the seed of empire. Flush with victory, they founded the Delian League, an alliance to defend against future Persian attacks. But over time, the alliance transformed into domination. Athens built a navy, an empire, and a golden age, an age of philosophy, art, and innovation that would echo for millennia. For Persia, the defeat at Plataea marked the end of its Western ambition. The empire would remain vast and powerful for centuries, but it would never again attempt to conquer mainland Greece. Instead, the Persians turned to subtler methods, diplomacy, bribery, and political manipulation, to influence Greek affairs. They learned, at great cost, that raw power has its limits. And what of the lessons for us, across 24 centuries of time? Plataea teaches us that victory is not always a matter of strength or numbers, but of preparation, unity, and purpose. The Greeks faced endless setbacks. They saw their cities burned, their alliances falter, their armies nearly starve, yet they did not break. They adapted, endured, and fought on. It also reminds us that coalitions, fragile, mistrustful, often divided, can still achieve greatness if they hold together when it matters most. The Greek alliance nearly collapsed many times. The Persians tried to divide them with promises of gold and peace. Yet in the end, Athens and Sparta, Corinth and Megara stood side by side. Theirs was not perfect unity, but it was enough. And perhaps the most timeless lesson is this: innovation does not always mean invention. The Greek phalanx was not new. It had existed for centuries. But through relentless training and cultural devotion, the Spartans perfected it. They took something old and made it unbreakable. Sometimes, greatness lies not in discovering the new, but in mastering the old. In every age, the same pattern repeats. The side that understands discipline, that trains harder, holds tighter, and refuses to break, is the side that wins. Plataea is proof of that truth written in blood and bronze. Even now, more than 2,000 years later, we can feel the echo of that day. On the fields near Plataea, freedom stood its ground. A wall of shields held fast against the tide of empire, and from that stand flowed the world we know today, a world shaped by the ideas, the courage, and the discipline of those who refused to kneel. The sun set that evening over a land forever changed. The Spartans buried their dead, the Athenians sang hymns of victory, and across the smoking ruins of the Persian camp, the wind carried the faint cry of those who had believed themselves invincible. The Persians had come to Greece seeking conquest. They left with a lesson that would outlast empires. That true power does not lie in numbers or wealth, but in the hearts of men who stand together and do not yield. And so, the Battle of Plataea became more than a military victory. It became a legend, a testament to discipline, courage, and unity. The secret weapon that destroyed the Persian invasion and preserved the cradle of Western civilization.